Right, good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's Fans Forum. Delighted to be joined by members of our fans groups, fanzines, and podcasts, as well as Nigel Travis, Mark Devlin, and Steve Tate, who are going to be answering the questions this evening. So, just to confirm the format for those watching on YouTube, so supporters have sent in their questions in advance. These will be answered by the three on tonight's panel. And then subject to time at the end, so we're going to go for an hour, then the floor will be opened up to those representatives of the fans group on the call to ask any additional questions. So to go straight in with question one, which has come from Les Hart. So I'm going to come to you for this one, Mark, first of all. And Les says, Saturday afternoon football is being wrecked by international breaks. I'm a season ticket holder but can't make Tuesday games. I want to see football on Saturdays. The club must be losing money and support. Can the club challenge this with the FA, EFL, etc.? What powers do we have?
Okay. Well, first thing to say is the club is also frustrated, as frustrated as supporters as well, over the international breaks. I mean, international breaks have been around for a few years. Then they're nothing new. But what is new, and as far as I'm aware, I'm not sure, ourselves and Exeter, at least this year, have been affected in the same way, that all three of the international breaks have fallen on days when we have home matches scheduled. Never known that to happen before. Nobody was really aware of it, and it's hit us like a ton of bricks. And I know how disappointed fans are, and I think we've already mentioned, we've been public, that when Steve does the reviews the numbers on each game, the reduction in revenue and the number of people that can attend and the knock-on effect that has on expenditure in the stadium, the three games are likely to cost us a combined total somewhere in the region of anywhere between about 170 and 200,000 pounds. The Huddersfield game, for instance, looked like it was heading for a sellout, both visiting fans and our own fans. Hospitality was nigh on full, and obviously got decimated by the change. And we've obviously reduced the prices for the rearranged fixture as a bit of a gesture. So it's incredibly frustrating. The chief exec of the Football League was with us at the Exeter game, and seeing as Exeter were also affected in exactly the same way as we were, I took the opportunity to say to Trevor that it wasn't on, it was unfair. I don't think anyone foresaw this. And it will be something that continues to get discussed when we have the next all-club meeting, and indeed the League One and League Two meeting, when there are members of the EFL hierarchy in place. So we are taking it up with the EFL. To be honest with you, I think the way the fixture list is being squashed now by the increased number of European games, and seeing what's happened to the Carabao Cup draw as a result of the extension of all those competitions, I think it would even be better if the games are already scheduled for Tuesday, so that fans know well in advance at the start of the season that the game is going to be played on a Tuesday night. I think the whole disappointment for both the supporter and the club of having a late change to the date and a postponement just can't go on. It really isn't sustainable. So we are taking it up with the EFL. As I say, we've already done that and we'll continue to do that. And I know there's a couple of other clubs that are joining us in that conversation quite vociferously, to be fair. So, one of the alternatives is we just play. And I think we have to be careful then that we're not asking a head coach to play with some of his key players missing when our opposition might not be affected. And if we were to lose the game, I'm sure people would be unhappy with that as well and would wonder why we've gone into a game under strength. So there aren't easy ways around this, but having all our home games affected by international breaks is simply unfair. And for a club at our level, even clubs, well, in the Championship, they already have the break scheduled. So they play their games on Tuesdays. They don't have games scheduled. We can't sustain losing the best part of £200,000 and the goodwill of supporters who get fed up with the changes. But it's something that we will continue to take on. One thing I should just mention, though, George, we've obviously been through, Steve and I have looked at lots of data, and the interesting fact is that even with the three rearranged games to Tuesday evenings, this year, league games on a Tuesday, we will have 5 scheduled, and last year we had 5 league games scheduled on Tuesday evenings. So it's about the same effect. I think it's just the fact that people were looking forward to a game on a Saturday afternoon and then it gets changed to a Tuesday. And I think that has a real negative impact for both supporter and the club. But the actual number of Tuesday games is kind of unaffected from last year. I'm talking about league games now. I think it was exacerbated, and I'll let you talk then in a minute. It was exacerbated by the fact that fans were very concerned about the number of games that would be moved away from Saturdays under the new Sky TV deal, which, you know, we had the Bolton game moved to 5:30. The Burton game is 12:30. So far, they're the only two home games that have really been affected by the Sky TV deal. At the very least, they continued on Saturdays, but obviously the kick-off time was changed. And we've had TV games now confirmed up to the end of February and into March, and we don't have any other games, scheduled to be changed. So the second half of the season, the majority of games are much more robust, much more back to normal of Saturday games, with the exception, obviously, of the Mansfield game, which we need to fit in somewhere.
Excellent, thank you, Mark. Steve, just operationally, is there anything you wanted to add towards the end there?
I think Mark's covered a lot of the points regarding the financial impact of 200 grand hit that Caesar's experience. And I think it's just this season expressed the same sentiments Mark's given. It's the same five games on a Tuesday as we had last season. It's just all been at once of the front half of the season. So it feels very full on, feels very stop-start this season. But we're playing away for the third round weekend of the FA Cup, when we due to play Birmingham in January, and the international break, we're due to play Mansfield away. So there's very few opportunities for another game to be rescheduled, bordering an active guard or bordering the pitch being frozen, etc. Something like that we can't control. So the second half of the season should be a lot more steady Saturday 3 o'clock kickoffs.
Great, thank you, Steve. Coming back to you, Mark, for the next one, which is new stadium related. So just the latest on the new stadium, and how realistic is it to expect to find a suitable location for a new ground within the local area?
There's not much to update on. We continue to have good conversations with the council. We've had to spend a fair amount of time proving the case that expansion at Brisbane Road to the kind of capacity we were looking for is not possible. And we've had to look at all sorts of things that the council have put us through. We've gone through that process. That's taken about 6 months just to go through a whole variety of scenarios and projects and reports and so forth. So we've now moved on to a stage where we are looking at potential sites. I think it's definitely not unrealistic that we can find a site in Waltham Forest. And as I've mentioned, I think previously, there are 3 sites, and we think there's another site that's got some potential as well that we're looking at. But they all have pros and cons. And it's unfair to really mention any of the sites at the moment, not because trying to keep it secretive, but I don't want to put any pressure on any of our conversations, because we're maintaining a really healthy debate with the council. But the question is how realistic is it? And I think it's very realistic for us to. What we have is the will of a council that want to retain the club within the borough. They really want us to stay within Leyton, which again is our aspiration as well. So when you've got the will of the borough and we've got their senior team working with us, we have regular 6-week meetings with them where we inch forward in our conversations. But not all of the sites that we're looking at are owned by the council, so there are other people involved. So that can confuse matters and delay matters. Planning in London is never straightforward, although obviously the council have been very positive in their conversations with us. So conversations are really positive. They're ongoing. I think Nigel has mentioned this on more than one occasion. My experience at Brentford tells me that moving to a new stadium, finding a site and building and actually moving into it is probably, it will do really well to get there inside of 7 or 8 years, and more realistically, it's probably a decade away anyway, which is why we've been investing into the infrastructure at Brisbane Road to help us as a business and as a club.
Thanks, Mark. And just to follow up on that one, actually, so the second part to that question was, will fans be kept updated on the proposed site options before a final decision is made?
We can't take we can't take a giant step like the move of the stadium forward without keeping fans involved all the time. Fans have already made it very clear to us that they want us to remain as an East London club. They want us to remain in an E postcode. Taken all of that on board. We share that aspiration as well. I think that's what makes us unique. We can become, something special in East London. Really, it's where our roots are, and we don't want to lose that. So we will keep fans involved as much as possible throughout the process, notwithstanding the fact that some discussions have to be confidential. But we will always, I think when it comes to actually identifying a site and talking about infrastructure, fans also don't want to just move to a dusty, boring round bowl that it's soulless. So the makeup and architecture of the stadium will continue to talk to supporters about that all the way, even down to, as I discovered at Brentford, there's a very long and detailed process about, once we get to that place, moving fans across. Groups of fans want to stay together. Where do they want to go? Is it behind a goal?
About tariffs. So I relate to Orient is a bit of a stretch, but I will try. I think the first thing I'd say is I was in when we had one of these when we had one of these international breaks, I went to see England and Finland. And before that, I was in Poland. Everyone there is obviously concerned about Ukraine. I think Donald Trump will find a way to fix that. So I think that's a good bit of news, and hopefully good news for everyone in England. I think the current administration has been very restrictive on a lot of M&A activity. That I think is going to be helpful to Leyton Orient, because I think it's going to release a lot of money into the financial markets. Clearly, the stock market's reacted positively. So as we look for new investors, I think that's positive. I think the issue that no one quite can get their head around is tariffs. Tariffs could lead to a reciprocal backwards and forwards. So I think at the end of the day, it's not going to have much effect on Leyton Orient. I could argue that it's marginally positive, but I think it's too difficult a question to really answer, because there's too many ifs and whats and maybes. And Steve said, keep that short. Was that short? Sorry, George said that, not Steve.
Thanks, Nigel. Mark, coming back to you for the next question, which is another fixture-related one from Jeff Higgins, who asks, why was the Boreham Wood match moved? It doesn't appear to have been shown live on TV, either in the UK or abroad. So what's the reason for the move?
It was shown live abroad, and I know that many of our board over in the US watched the game live over there. The other reason for it being moved is that it was selected for what the BBC call extended highlights. and they moved it to 2:00 on the Sunday for that reason. And as I say, it was also shown abroad, which gave us an opportunity to showcase the club, albeit that we tweaked over the line in the end. So it was probably very exciting for those people watching at home, less so for fans and supporters and for those of us in the stadium at the time. But that's the reason why the game got moved.
Can I just ask, have we any idea how many people actually watched it on streaming or whatever?
We will get a figure from the EFL. The company that are responsible for this is the FA. So the company that are responsible for the overseas transmissions do provide that data, but we don't. You'll be surprised to know that we don't get the data. Probably we're about a month behind, so we'll find out soon enough. But we will get the numbers because we need it for our own tracking, media and marketing purposes.
I would make a guess that game was on early Sunday morning. Many of these games on CBS TV, which is the league games. This was on ESPN Plus, and the coverage, by the way, was excellent. And I would guess it's about 300,000, which is actually pretty good.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
There we go.
Staying with you for the next one, Mark, which is coming from Nigel Smith. And Nigel Smith asks, does the club have insurance to cover all or part of the salaries of players who cannot play due to injury? And if so, is this just for long-term injuries or does it cover short-term injuries? How would the reimbursement from the insurance company work?
So the players are covered by central insurance, which covers medical costs. But what we don't and are not able to recoup are wages. So players that are injured, for whether they're short-term or long-term, the club have to, front up and pony up those costs. But long-term injuries and medical costs, or I should say medical costs, we can reclaim through our medical insurance. So that just comes back into the club, and it's the same, more or less the same process as people who have private insurance. Really, it all goes through, the paperwork goes through the machinations, and it comes back, and it affects our cover the following year. If we don't have too many big medical bills, then our costs go down, and if we have bad run of long-term injuries, then our costs go up the following year. It works as simply as that.
Great, thank you, Mark. Steve, coming to you with the next one. Similar question to the one before. Obviously, we've had some bad news with Theo earlier this week, and the supporter who got in touch said Theo was ruled out for the season on Tuesday night. We've had a few mixed messages in the last few weeks about him. What's the latest and why was that?
Yeah, well, first of all, we're absolutely devastated for Theo. Everyone here at the club absolutely loves him, and we'll be there all the way in his recovery. The injury was complicated. The setback he incurred. The first specialist he saw, the outcome was really negative. It was similar to what we've seen that Theo go through currently. He's had to have surgery, and he's out for another season. He went to see a second opinion, and the outcome was much more positive. He could possibly play again without the ligament being reattached for a few seasons. But as for the following weeks transpired, it seemed, and it became more and more obvious that the surgery had to be done, and that's a process Theo's just gone through. But we didn't think it was right while it was unclear the extent of Theo's injury. We didn't think it was right to speak on that until we knew all the facts. I appreciate it seemed a bit murky at the time, but we didn't think it was right to Theo. It's an emotional time for him. And we didn't want to jump the gun and announce something we didn't know fully until now.
I think it's worth adding that Theo has received, I think he would say, very good support from the club. We talk a lot to him about his career, his future career. I've had conversations with him. He is, as Steve said, a great asset, and I think he'll have a role in football well beyond the end of his playing career. So I think this is a great demonstration of how Leyton Orient goes the extra mile with players, unlike, I would say, some other clubs.
Great, thank you both. I'll stay with you, Nigel, for the next one, which has come from Adam, who says, considering the restrictions with our budget, are we set up in a way that gives us the edge in other areas, i.e. analytics, scouting, hiring policy, etc., to maintain our position or improve? Are there reviews of roles and people within those roles, and whether they are right for us to take the next steps, giving us an edge over our competitors?
Okay, that came from Adam, correct?
Yeah, so number 7, question 7.
Okay, so Adam, very good question. And I think it's fair to say that we have to stay on top of this all the time. I personally think we can do a lot better than we've done, and Martin knows that. I've said that to him regularly. I've had conversations with Martin, Richie, and a lot of people about this over the last few weeks. So we do need to, in my mind, improve our approach to scouting, analytics. There's all kinds of new ways of doing analytics out there, as even ways to get access to the kind of super analytics that Brighton and Brentford are famous for. So I think we can. I think that the best thing I can say is we can do a lot better. We will do a lot better, and we're working very hard at making us better right now.
Great, thank you, Nigel. Mark, coming back to you for the next one, which has come from Keith Hallam, who says, Orient do not participate in the voluntary Football Leadership Diversity Code monitoring. Can the club participate in this programme in the future? Are coaching jobs for Orient properly advertised? And do these adverts emphasise the company culture, specifying a commitment to diversity?
So the first part of that question is, yes, we do want to participate, and I have applied for the club to be involved in the Football Leadership Diversity Code. So there's absolutely no reason why we won't participate in that. So we will do at some point in the future when the FA get back to me. As for jobs, not just coaching jobs, which Keith has referred to, all of our jobs use a recruiting tool called iRecruit. It's for all of our vacancies, as I say. It conceals all the applicants' personal details, and it allows for a much fairer recruitment process. So it gets rid of unconscious bias, and we've been using that now for the past few months. It's been recommended by the EFL as the right way to go about in terms of when you're recruiting staff. As I say, not only coaching staff but administration staff behind the scenes. So I'm quite proud of the diversity of the people who work in our club, both by gender, both by race. We've got a really good, healthy mix of staff on and off the field. So I'm proud of the team that we've got, and I will always want us to recruit the right people for the job, irrespective of. I might make exceptions if they're Chelsea fans, but other than that, I won't show any bias whatsoever.
Hey, why do you keep bringing up Chelsea? I mean, what's wrong with us criticising QPR?
Yeah, well, you do that all the time, Nigel. So I don't want to add to my burden. Hope that answers the question, George. You're on mute, George. You're on mute, George.
Thanks, Mark. Right, next question is from Jeff, who asks, can you clear up the question of our budget? Marshall Taylor on a recent podcast said our budget was 12th to 14th. Richie has said that we have one of the smallest budgets in League One. Which is it?
Okay, I will in a minute defer to Steve, but so the playing budget this year, we plan to increase the playing budget by 10%. Now, I've seen questions about what does that mean? Does that include this person, that person? The playing budget, the amount of money we spend on salaries, agents' fees, any transfer fees, all that kind of stuff. The plan at the start of the season in the budget was that increased by 10% on that we had last year. So it was on a completely like-for-like basis. For a variety of reasons, we thought it was sensible to hold a percentage of that back for the January window. We subsequently spent all of that, and we've actually gone through the budget, and we have now probably increased the budget by something like, well, it's getting close to 20%. It's around 17-18% on last year. So that's a like-for-like basis. So I mean, the club is ambitious, but we also, we want to be sustainable, and that's just to remind everyone. I know there's a question later on about the over commercialism of everything, but we are a business that loses in excess of £3 million a year. We are still reliant upon investors putting money into the club, and so we want to continue to progress up the league. So we're trying to find that balance. So that's where we are. The club received some benchmarking data recently, which anonymises the clubs except your own club. And Steve and I have been speaking to some of our colleagues at other clubs, and it shows that our playing budget ranks as 15th at this moment in time, ranks as 15th in the league. So depends how you look at whether that ranks as one of the smallest or whether that's more in the middling side of things. So that's where we currently are. I think Marshall, was plucking some numbers that he knew from board meetings, but that's an accurate statement of where we are budget-wise compared to other clubs, and how much more we have spent on the playing budget this year compared to last year. Steve, I'll hand over to you to finish.
Yeah, just follow up to say the reason it could be 17, it could be 18%. It's not an exact figure, is because there's an element of win bonuses in those numbers. So I hope it's 18. I hope we win more games, we pay more win bonuses. There's a degree of flex in those numbers. The benchmarking also said that teams were in League One this year that were also in League One in the prior season. The average increase in their playing budget was 9%. So when Mark talks about 18%, you can see we're significantly outstripping the average growth year on year in the League One teams or in the league year on year. But we recognised that the teams coming up from League Two were going to have significant power, whereas with the teams coming down from the Championship, and we needed to be on a front foot when it came to recruitment. Alongside that, we knew we were getting Danagai back from fully fit for a pre-season, which we didn't have last year, and Jordan Graham as well. We're having more of him, hopefully having more of him this season than of last as well. So we thought the 18% increase in the playing budget plus those two guys being fit gave us a solid foundation for the team.
Great, thank you, Steve. We'll stay on playing budget and transfers for the next one. So Nigel, Jamie asks, is our transfer strategy good enough? Can we win some games? And thankfully, since he sent that question in, we have won quite a few games.
Yeah, okay, but I understand what he means. I mean, I think we started the season with some pretty strong, well-funded teams to play. And I was talking to Richie, who was involved in whatever event was on the pitch this morning. I talked to Richie about 3 hours ago, and he's got some stats which I will allow him to go through in one of his interviews. And I think in the next group of games up to the halfway season, we only play one team above 10th, which is Barnsley away, which happens to be my next game over there. So we got, and I won't quite get this right, and I'm going to parrot what he said. We got coming up teams against 23rd, 22nd, 21st, 19th, I think 16th, 13th, etc. So we've got, if you like, some of the teams who are down the bottom half of the table. Before anyone says it, yes, I know we lost to Shrewsbury, which was a dreadful performance. And I want to be consistent with what I said before. I think we need to do better. I don't think we've done well enough so far this year on bringing in players. Our recruitment does need to improve. It's constantly under review. But I would point out that I think we do have a lot of talent in our side. People like Ethan Galbraith, Ollie O'Neill, Brandon Cooper, Zek Cabirio, and we're planning very hard for the January window. So like everything at the club, and Mark will tell you, it's not just our transfer policy or our recruitment policy, but I'm on everyone's back about improving things like ticket sales, sponsorship, etc. So you constantly have to keep pushing hard in football. It's a tough business, but I think we need to do better, is the essence of my answer.
Great, thank you, Nigel. Next one is another TV related one, so I'll come back to you, Mark, for it. And Steve Smith asks, do the board believe that oversaturated TV coverage and the increased ticket prices are to blame for the drop in attendances at Gorham Group Stadium this season so far?
Well, it's clear that the moving of games from Saturday to Tuesday evenings for international breaks has, to put it mildly, been unfortunate and clearly has had a detrimental effect on attendances. I still reiterate what I said earlier. We still look like only having the same number of Tuesday evening games in the league as we had last year, but undoubtedly when they're moved at the last minute, and that's why I come back to, if it's already planned on a Tuesday night, fans can cope with that. They know early on whether they can get to the game or not. When it's moved within 2 weeks of the date of the game, I can completely understand why fans get exasperated, and that has definitely shown in the numbers of people attending games on Tuesday evenings. Ticket pricing, and I think I may well have responded on social media. Ticket pricing and season tickets, looking at the whole season ticket packaging for next season, given the TV deal. Hopefully there'll be some common sense around international breaks. I think we will need to review that. But coming back to the fact that we've put 18% more into our playing budget, we do need to continue to try and bring money in. It's not as though the ticket pricing covers all of our costs. We are, as I say, a business that loses over £3 million a year, and in a bid to try and be sustainable. And would you believe it or not, that makes us one of the better clubs in League One, where the average loss is now about twice that, which and it's going up every year, and obviously made worse when teams like Birmingham City come down and spend £10 million on one player. So it is a challenge. So we accept that the Tuesday night games, particularly the changes for international breaks, have had an effect. As I say, the Sky TV deal, there were a lot of rumblings about that at the start of the year. It does bring in a significantly bigger amount of money into the club at the start of the season, but getting fans into the stadium is still vitally important to us, not only financially, but from an experience and from an atmosphere point of view. So we speak to all the other clubs. Every other club is suffering in the same way from TV games, particularly those teams that have had lots of games moved for TV. It's a continual challenge. So we are going to have to come up with a much more agile season ticket process and policy next year. So we're going to look to try and be as creative as possible with that next year. We put our prices up to a level that we felt we needed to. Have we put them up slightly too high? Some people would argue maybe that is the case, and I perhaps have a little bit of sympathy for that. But please bear in mind, we are trying to run a business here that doesn't go out of business, and so we do try to price things to ensure that the club has enough revenue coming in, both commercially and from a ticketing point of view and a retail point of view. So it's difficult to balance all of those things with being ambitious, having an ambitious playing budget. We're limited in the amount of people we can get into the stadium, hence the reason why we're looking to move to a bigger site where we can make more of the stadium. So it's not, as Nigel has alluded to, he quite rightly gives me a hard time about ensuring that we maximise the amount of revenue we can bring into the club, using the games on match days, using the stadium on non-match days. But there is a finite point with that. And I understand we can't keep going to a well and asking more and more and more from our supporters. But we've got to try and find a balance. And it isn't an easy one to strike, but that's what we're trying to do. So definitely the Tuesday night international break changes have been really unfortunate and have definitely had an effect. Sky TV less so, because, as I say, we've not really suffered too badly with that, but and we don't look like suffering too badly with it going into March. But yes, the point is taken.
Any further points, George? The 4 Saturday games we've had so far have been well attended. I think everyone was at the Blackpool game that saw the East End. We'll see how full it looked. We've got the full capacity back in that East End now, and thank you to the SAG, the Safety Advisory Group, for their cooperation with all the work we've done. They've been great partners on that. The sales figures for the Saturday games look good, so for upcoming, so we should have some good, well-attended games coming up, as do the Huddersfield and the Oldham games as well. We've got 2 £10 ticket games coming up in a week, next week as well, and the reaction from supporters has been great. So hopefully we've got 2 well-attended games.
Great, thank you, Steve. Right, the next couple of questions are new stadium related, which have been covered already within earlier answers. So I'm going to go on to the next one, which is another recruitment one. But Dean Lees asks, why do we keep signing players on loan and not permanently? So Nigel, I'll come to you for that one.
Yeah, okay, so there's basically three groups of players that we could identify. One is permanent signings, who are experienced players. Secondly, and the rest of the question really talked about people coming through the academy. There's people coming through the academy and as loans. We try and take advantage of all three. And we've talked before about the success that we've had. And in terms of the number of players on the pitch over the last few years that have come through the academy as measured by the EFL, we've always done well. Again, I'm going to say what I said before. I think we need to do a lot better. I think we've had some players that have come on loan that we've signed, ultimately Brandon Cooper being one example. I think you'll find there's a chance that one of the current loan players will get signed permanently coming up. And some loan players who aren't good enough, well, some loan players who aren't good enough will go back. The advantage of loan players, just so everyone knows, is that we can actually get players, assuming that they meet the right standard, at a much more affordable level. One player we have right now, we're paying under 25% of that individual's compensation by their host club. And I'll say it again, under 25%. So that tells you, A, how much people at the big clubs are being paid, and B, what a good deal loan players are. But we will continue, and it's a very consistent theme I've had during this call. We need to improve our recruitment. We need to improve the people coming through the academy. And having been to see 2 academy games this year, I think there is a good pipeline of talent coming up. I think it's fair to comment on the second part of your question, that perhaps we've had a couple of years where the scholars coming from the scholarship into the pro leagues may not have been as good as we've seen previously, but I think that happens. It goes up and down historically.
I'll just follow that point, George. I think looking at the highlights again from Tuesday night, we've got a real golden generation of talent coming through. So hopefully we'll see in place of some of those loans going forward, hopefully we'll have more of our own talent coming through the pipeline, which would be great to see. It's what everyone wants from a club, I think.
6-0, wasn't it? I missed that because I was in the middle of a board meeting.
Yeah, they played very, very well. Right, next question is from George Kelly. So Mark, I'll come to you for this one, which you did touch on earlier. And George asks, why has everything within the club become so money orientated? The obsession with budget and figures from ourselves and other clubs has now rubbed off on fans and is becoming unbearable.
It's a tough one to answer, really, because quite a few questions. We've already seen a number of questions already this evening about our budget. Why aren't we doing this, that, and the other? Why aren't we, So unfortunately, football is a business. We talk about it a lot more than when I first went on the terraces back in the 70s and 80s. The advent of the Premier League, the Sky TV deal, the Champions League and what have you, it has made football all about money. We try to fair game, which we are a part of. They say that transparency about finances is something that's key to keep your fan base engaged. And I think we try to do that as best we can. And maybe sometimes we do it too often on various podcasts and what have you. So we're a business as well as a football club. And I've seen a criticism. The criticism that I take umbrage with is that we've become commercial at the expense of no longer being a community club. And I don't think that could be further from the truth. The club has always been brilliant in the community. We've taken on April, who's got a fantastic background, and I have no doubt will take us even further forward to into schools and youth clubs and all different social groups that we want to continue to support and work alongside our community trust. So we are a commercial organisation. My job is to give a hard time to the commercial team, the retail team, and the ticket office to keep trying to raise revenue in the right way. I do believe we are open and honest with our fans. We try to communicate as often as possible. But football is a business, and it's an expensive business. The cost of running a club, even away from the playing side, the cost of stewarding, of keeping supporters safe, of upgrading the stadium, of keeping it up to speed, investing in the pitch, investing in staff is ever some, just continues to rise. And that's not a moan. That's just a fact of life. And we have to deal with that and get on with it and manage the business, which is why we make a big deal when we get new commercial partners in. We've got a fantastic group of commercial partners who are really supportive of the club. So, I know that maybe some fans just say, can we not just talk about football, please? I'd love to just talk about the football, but the fact of the matter is football is a business. It does mean that the commercials in football are important, but I want to make it really, really clear that I think the club is still a fantastic asset to the community and works incredibly hard to support our community, to do all the right things. We've been approached by the local authority to provide warm spaces for the homeless when the temperatures dip below 0, which we're always happy to do and get involved if that's what they want us to do. It's important that we're part of that. And I think that's recognised by the fact that the council are so keen to keep us within the borough and within Leyton.
I don't think there's as much focus on what's we're playing. More competitive environment like we are in League One right now. There's a lot more inclination to look at what our neighbours are doing, what's everyone else doing around us. Are we doing the same thing? Are we doing the wrong thing? So I think it's just a bit of a fact of our environment this year and last year. But hopefully tonight, being as open as we have been, draws a line under the playing budget discussion for this year. We've been categorical in that sense. I don't think it needs to be gone over again anymore.
Great, thank you both. Right, a beer question next. Samuel Bush, I'll come to you, Mark, says, due to personal taste, I don't particularly like the beers on offer at the grounds now. Is there any chance we could get a local lager in, such as Leyton Pilsner, up the O's?
Samuel, sorry that it doesn't meet your personal taste. One thing I will say, we moved away and we moved to Shepherd Neame because they are really, as I like to call it, agile. They're really creative in their thoughts. They created some special beers for the Hearts game, some memorial beers and so forth, without us even asking them. They're quite, they're small, but they're an impressive firm, and they have really embraced the club. What we'll do is we will talk to them. We've had lots of positive feedback about the beers that we now offer, but I appreciate beer is a very personal thing, and we will talk to them about some of the beers that we might be able to introduce, including a Leyton Pilsner. So you'll have to excuse my knowledge here. I don't know if one of those exists or not, but if it does, we'll see whether it can be incorporated in any way, shape, or form. We will. We will go to Shepherd Neame and see what can be done. But it's difficult to please all the people all the time. But we're delighted with the relationship with Shepherd Neame, and obviously down in the supporters bar. The team down there pick their own guest ales. They've been doing that for years. They know what they're doing down there in terms of guest ales. So whilst they use the Shepherd Neame brands as well, there is also the real ales available down in the supporters bar. But we will talk to Shepherd Neame about that. So thank you for letting us know, Sam.
Excellent. Thank you, Mark. An investment question next. So Nigel Vince asks, what does the future hold should we be unsuccessful with finding additional investment? Should we be concerned that you may have to reluctantly sell the club or play at a level so to reduce the losses considerably?
Okay, so multi-parts there. The first thing I'll say is reducing the level, which I guess means going down to League Two. I think Steve did an analysis the other day that showed that we don't actually lose much less. And so that's point one. Point two, I think in many ways, this is a unique year where the three clubs that came down had significant resources to invest in their squad, and also the teams that came up, apart from perhaps Crawley, had significant resources as well. So it's a unique year. We're trying to bring in investment, as you say. The process is currently going well. I'm actually quite enthusiastic about the number of people we're talking to. Our goal, just so you know, is to have probably 3, 4, 5 people that we can put together competitively and make sure they're the right fit in terms of their desire to run a football club appropriately. It's not just the league that has a director's test. We effectively have one as well. And so far, so good. I think, I think I'm going to say my record stands. I never set out to own the club. I never set out to save the club. But over £10 million plus later, I'm still supporting the club. So I think that's my answer to what's going to happen. And I also want to underscore what Mark said, that if we can reduce the losses, obviously it makes it easier to bring in new investors, because some people are shocked when they see how much football clubs lose. A fact that a lot of people don't like is that 80 out of 92 Premier League and EFL clubs lose money. So if you're out selling it, it's not necessarily the most attractive proposition. But I'm confident we will get more investment. Secondly, I think I've demonstrated my commitment to the club, and all I would also say is we need to keep finding ways of making the losses better, and we continually push through the league and through government and redistribution, which one day will come out of the football governance bill, I hope, should help our losses be reduced.
Thank you, Nigel. Next couple of questions are both kind of recruitment related, so I'm going to combine them. So this one was sent in anonymously, and they have said, it's been a dreadful start to the season. We've got players that are not good enough to compete in this league. We're in a relegation scrap. The football hasn't been good. We pay our hard-earned money to watch this team week in, week out. So that was more of a statement than a question. And then the second question, which is from Nadeem Khan, says, our biggest problem is goal scoring. It might cost us regardless. Why can't we get a decent striker? I'll stay with you, Nigel, for those.
Okay, why can't we get a decent striker? I think every team in the country is trying to get decent strikers. But anyway, I think the first thing I would say is, I think we've got a couple of strikers we actually think are very good. I mean, both Dana Guy and Charlie Coleman have got 6 goals so far this year. I think everyone has a view about the quality of the team. I think the standard of the football, again, is debatable. If I go through all the games we lost, I think we played extremely well against Bolton and Birmingham. We also had one of the most entertaining games I think I've seen in a long time against Peterborough, which we probably should have won, but we drew. The game against Wrexham, we were clearly the better team. So I think I'd push back very strongly on the unattractive football. I think we've actually played some pretty good football, but we've had various players out. That led to the team being somewhat ill-balanced. Again, I come back to what was said earlier by both Steve and Mark. We actually went above the budget to bring in Don Ball. We identified, that we needed another player to, if you like, balance out the midfield, and we did that. So I think a lot of this is down to opinion, but I'll repeat what I said 3 times earlier. We have to keep working to improve what we see, who we bring in, and that work goes on and will go on into the transfer window.
Great, thank you, Nigel. Next question is about protecting assets that we already have. So Sydney Tucker Vennett asks, will there be any measures put in place to make sure that we don't lose talents who are running out of contracts for free?
Okay, well, The first thing I will say is you can't guarantee anything will happen. Certain players have received very generous, I would say generous in our opinion, so that's subjective, offers to sign. So far, some haven't. We continue to go out there. So you come back to what you do. If in most walks of life, if I go to Mark and say, Mark, I want to increase your salary by X, that's usually resolved in a week or so, or perhaps even a day or so. With players who are under contract, that it doesn't seem to happen quite that way. Now, whether it's the impact of agents or not, and sometimes things go on, and to be brutally honest, sometimes we scratch our head and say, so-and-so hasn't accepted this deal, it's costing him money. But what I would say, the players that I think you're referring to, we actually have them under a relatively long-term contract, so we feel we're pretty well protected. But it isn't through a lack of trying.
Great, thank you, Nigel. Steve, coming to you now. So this has been addressed already, but I'll just ask you to run over it again. So Jeff Cole asks, as a club, how much does the club lose when matches are moved from a Saturday to a Tuesday because of international breaks? Do we get any compensation for these moves?
Okay, thanks, Jeff. I'll be really quick. I know we're tight for time. Two parts to that. We do receive some compensation for FA Cup games that are rescheduled. I think just last week, actually, we received some compensation for the Blackpool game in January that was rescheduled. So 10, 11 months later, to try and make the difference up from a Saturday to a Tuesday game. But you don't receive any compensation for a Saturday league game moved for international games. So that 200k hole will remain there as a result. So I think we've covered the rest of the question already, George.
Great, thank you, Steve. Mark, coming back to you for the next one, which has come in from some of the fan groups. And they ask, our community fan groups are delighted that the club supports the EFL's Together Against Racism campaign and the Kick It Out campaign against all forms of discrimination, including homophobia. Just last month, the club wrote that Leyton Orient will take swift and firm action against anyone identified as making racist or discriminatory behaviour, working with the relevant authorities to ensure perpetrators face club sanctions and police action. Can the club explain why racism and discrimination continues to exist on its social media channels? It appears as if no action is taken against its proponents. Can you please explain your processes in this regard? Has anyone ever been banned from the club for their hostility to minority groups? And can this be communicated in matchday programmes to highlight the seriousness of such acts? And would it be possible for the club to follow the lead set by other clubs in changing the antisocial behaviour number to a 5-digit text number, because the current one flashed on the LED boards is too long to be taken down?
Okay, cheers, George. Yeah, this is an important one. So we're really proud of the diverse fan base that we've got, and it's a slow process. I think most clubs will say the same thing. It's a slow process, but it is slowly but surely getting more diverse. We've got more supporter groups. Hopefully, fans have seen the work that's gone on with different supporter groups that have cropped up from different backgrounds. And they are really fan-led initiatives that the club is just happy to support, because the fans themselves are able to take that message out to those particular communities in a way that's far more effective than the club doing it. So those processes are working well, and I hope fans are pleased with what we've seen there. When we see offensive comments online, and please bear in mind, we have a small team. We're not Facebook, we're not Meta, so we don't have hundreds of people checking social media every minute of the day. But when our own staff, yourself, George, your team, when we see offensive comments in some of our owned social media, we will of course take them down. And we've been grateful to those fans who have contacted either myself or any of the team and have brought to light some offensive comments, which I think we've acted as quickly as possible on those. Users have been, as far as we can, users have been banned and blocked from social media pages in the past, but this, I'm pretty certain to say that this hasn't extended to stadium bans. And clearly, if fans do anything inside the stadium, whether it's racial chanting or anything else of a similar nature that's reported and that is seen by stewards, police, and so forth, then we will continue to work with all those authorities. And where it has to happen, bans will be put in place. So we want to make the ground and continue to make the ground somewhere that everyone can come and feel comfortable. And we know there's a particular song that we're working with the Supporters Trust and Per Game 2. We're looking to find positive ways we can eradicate the song, which some people don't find offensive, but it makes some people uncomfortable, and people don't want to hear it in the stadium. And what we want to see is more and more people from every background, every gender, every race coming and supporting Orient and enjoying the experience and their time in and around the stadium. So we've got a lot of work to do. We've reached out to Kick It Out for some advice on what happens because we've been contacted recently about some fans that have been guilty of comments, but on messages and on forums that the club is not involved in. And we've reached out to Kick It Out to find and take on board some of their advice as to what are we able to do? Are there any best practices out there that they can share with us? So we're currently having an exchange of conversation there with Kick It Out to find a way that we might be able to get involved there. We don't want to become Big Brother, but we also want to, I think it's only fair that everyone is respectful to each other and we continue to have a positive environment and positive experience when they come to the stadium. As for the text number, we'll take that on board, and if that's something that supporters think makes it easier to report anything they see or hear, then we'll clearly, in addition to the number that we use, we'll add this text number, and then people will be able to use whichever source they feel most comfortable with.
Great, thank you, Mark. Just conscious of time, we'll see if we can race through these last ones and open up to the floor for a couple of minutes as well. So the next one, Steve, I'll come to you, is from something we saw on the forum. So what's happening with Gorham?
I've spoken to Gorham. There's a dispute they're going through with another company. It's nothing to do with Leyton Orient. We've received assurances it's not going to have any impact on our partnership, on our financials, on our arrangements there, or on the reputation of the club or on Gorham. So no impact at all on the football club. We're still working with Gorham regularly. We've done a lot of work for them in the stadium of the East Stand in the summer. We're doing a lot of work currently at our new academy, the home of our games, at the Britannia Sports Complex. So no impact on the partnership. We're very happy.
Great, thank you, Steve. Mark, next one is for you, which is from Loft, who note that the club has published a fan engagement plan on its website as requested by the EFL. The plan includes a commitment to introduce a fan advisory board in the future with a remit to meet senior club representatives regularly to discuss long-term decision making. Given the publicised efforts to seek investment in the club, will the fan advisory board be introduced this season?
I can't give a timescale on it. I need to fully understand how a fan advisory board would interact and engage with the senior management at the club, and indeed the board of the club. There's absolutely, again, for reasons of transparency, we want to make sure that we involve fans at all levels in our decision-making process and the rationale behind some of the decisions we make. Having been through the years prior to Nigel and his colleagues taking over the club, I think it's important. Nigel's been very open and honest, and I think, and very transparent about the process that's of investment into the club. And in fact, Nigel's made it, Steve and I have sat on calls with Nigel, and Nigel's made it very clear that what's of interest to Nigel, he wants the legacy to make sure that, and he wants his legacy and his outcome, that Leyton Orient is still a successful, viable organisation in 100 years' time. So we're not looking for people that just come in for short-term reasons, for the wrong reasons, and that might mean turning down people that want to invest in the club. But that's been Nigel's mantra on all of the calls. Nigel's a fan as well, so he knows acutely what the club means to the community and its supporter base. So coming back to the question, we will look to sit down with the supporter groups to see how we can evolve this fan advisory board, what it looks like, what kind of policies they want to be involved in, how often they want to engage with the club. So I think it's important that we do that. I just can't give a timescale on it at the moment. We've mentioned April already, and I've seen all the goodwill messages, which are very nice to see from various people on the call today, wishing April all the best. So we've appointed, part of April's role is being our SLO. And again, I've having only known April now for a week and a half, I've no doubt she'll be a fantastic addition to the club in that part of the role, as well as everything else that we're asking her to do. So I take pride in our transparency. I'm sure there are people who would like us to be more transparent, but I actually think that the club is really transparent. In fact, at times there can be too many voices coming out of the club, and that can cause confusion. And in turn, people don't think there is, they read things into situations that aren't actually there. So hopefully that's answered the question, George. I appreciate I've gone on far too long. Apologies.
Thanks, Mark. Steve, question from the Orienteer, who asks, where is the club in the planning process for next season in terms of being competitive and attractive to players? What's been the learning for this season, do you think?
It's probably more of a Martin question. He's not on the call, but I'll try and answer it. Mike Still, the recruitment analyst, has put together a really neat deck on lessons learned from the summer and what we want to put into January into next year. There's a lot of players out of contract next year, so there's a lot of work to be done on the squad. But I think we've covered already that we were quite front foot. We knew what was coming from League One this season. It's becoming a mini championship with some of the big teams coming down. I was a bit surprised by how hard Birmingham have gone. It looks like they're going for a double promotion 2 years in a row, and it looks like we've got a good chance of doing that. But the teams coming up from League Two, teams coming down from the Championship, and the fact that Burton have been bought by a billionaire consortium, Wickham have been bought by a billionaire, Bristol Rovers have been bought by a royal family within the last year, it's not surprising to see ambition coming from all parts of and all different clubs in the league. There's probably 20 teams that fancy their chances at a playoff run or an automatic place, similar to the Championship as well. But there's already robust plans in place for January. I'll leave it for Martin to get into another time.
Great, thank you, Steve. The next question from the Orienteer was around some clarity on the increasing budget, which I think we've covered off already. So the next one, Nigel, is for you. Is about Coley Parry and his public issues with Vitesse on Twitter, or X as it's known now. How much is Coley still involved with Leyton Orient, and is his investment in the club compatible with our values on transparency and accountability?
Okay, so difficult one to answer because I don't read Twitter, so I'm not totally aware of the spat with Vitesse, but I know about the issues that have been there, and Coley has certainly talked to the board about that on occasions. Coley has been incredibly supportive of the club on occasions, and certainly I remind everyone that he put his investment in well before he got involved in Vitesse. So the money's there. The money, we're not waiting on Coley to put the money in. So that is right. I think it's wrong for us to make a judgment on what's happened in another country without all the facts. Indeed, the league informally asked about it on one occasion and came back and said they were satisfied with the answer. So as far as I'm concerned, they've had the capability of investigating it better than we have. But Coley continues to be a strong, enthusiastic member of the board, and there's nothing I see that is concerning in his dealings with Leyton Orient. Now, his dealings with Vitesse, I can't comment on, and he's got another club in Belgium, and I don't think there's any issues there. So I think that just points everything back up Vitesse and his relationship, and I suggest we all stay out of that.
Great, thank you, Nigel. Mark, the next one you've touched upon already, but just to summarise it quickly, so to make sure we ask it, is around the chant there, the East London chant that some supporters are upset by. Just what measures are in place to help tackle that?
So the plan was to meet with a group of the fans that we think are responsible for being the catalyst for the song. We were hoping to send out invitations to meet with them directly before the Huddersfield game. A couple of people are unable to attend that meeting, so we're going to see if we can reschedule that now to either the Oldham game or the Bristol Rovers game, when hopefully there'll be members from Loft as well as her game too, along with myself and whoever else comes from the senior management team, to talk to the fans and to hopefully have a friendly and positive conversation about either changing the words to the song so that it's much more compatible with modern day thinking, but continuing their pride in East London, coming out with a song that doesn't make anybody feel uncomfortable when they come in the stadium, or stop singing the song altogether. We want to balance that against not wanting, and this is the reason why, and part of the question was I'd suggested that fans self-police. And just for context, what that meant was, rather than sometimes if clubs come out and ask fans to do things, it's seen as being overbearing and fans see it as a challenge, and they do whatever it is they're being asked not to do, they do it with even more further. And I thought if the message came from fellow supporters, that might have been better received. I'm told that that's difficult to achieve. I accept that that is the case, which is why we're trying to get involved directly ourselves now. So that's where we currently are at. We are trying to take positive action. Her game too are aware of what we're trying to do, as indeed the Loft.
Great, thank you, Mark. Right, one more question to go. I'm conscious of Nigel's time, as I know you've got another call to jump onto.
Yeah.
But the last one, Mark, is for you. Again, it's from the Orienteer, who asks, what's the club's response to the issues raised by the neighbouring residents about non-match day noise and disturbances that were covered by the Waltham Forest Echo and London Standard?
Yeah, I was rather irritated by the way that came out and the way they tried to make contact with the club, which was particularly unprofessional, and certainly none of us knew about it. I have said that I don't want to comment any further publicly, really, until we go in front of the committee next week. All I will say is that I think we have been really good neighbours. We've had members of our staff threatened by a particular resident, and at that was at the point when I noticed that the residents weren't really responsive to that I decided that I would leave this issue with the team. We regularly communicate events at the club. I should just reiterate, this is not about our match days. They don't like the music being played on Spurs women match days. That's a separate conversation. But this is about the events that we, particularly evening events that are in our hospitality suites. And I'm back to the earlier point without wanting to talk about revenue again. Clearly, I'm asking the team to continue to try and generate as much revenue through the use of our facilities as possible. But we accept that we can't do that and make life difficult for people when they're trying to sleep and so forth. So we are prepared to go into that meeting to be really positive and to work with the residents to find an outcome that works for them if they're being, sensible, and work for the club as well, and allow us to continue to grow and thrive as a business. So other than that, I'd rather leave the detail to when we sit in front of the licensing committee, because I think we have a very strong case, to be honest, for the licensing committee to look at us favourably.
Mm.
Right, thanks very much, Mark. So that was all the pre-submitted questions. Did anyone want to ask any additional ones? But before we go into those, Nigel, I think you may need to.
Yeah, I do. So I want to thank everyone for coming on. I want to say I think we've answered as straightforwardly as we can. I'd ask everyone to get behind the team starting this weekend, when I think we have an important game at Stevenage. Tickets seem to be going well. Mark predicted about 1,000 this morning to me, so hopefully we'll hit that. And we've got an important week with Stevenage, Huddersfield, and the FA Cup. And we've got the draw tomorrow for the Bristol Street Motors Trophy.
Been rebranded been rebranded, Nigel, to the Virtu Trophy now.
I know. Well, by the way, one of my goals in life is to get it back, because Bristol Street I keep saying I want to say Bristol Street Rovers. I think that must be a football team. But I want to make sure that we keep making advances in all these cup competitions. The draws tomorrow, and talking to Richie, we can get Walsall, Charlton, Peterborough, or someone else who I've forgotten.
Wickham,
that's right. Away.
Exeter and Cheltenham.
No, Richie thought it was only 4, so I don't know quite how he came up with that, but you may be. I thought it was what you said, Mark, but he was pretty adamant when I talked to him. But anyway, I'll ask everyone to keep getting behind the team, and I'm pretty sure we're going to go up the table fairly soon, certainly based on last week. So thank you. I'll let you guys carry on and see you all soon.
Thanks, Nigel.
Thank you.
Thanks, Nigel.
right?
Thank you.
Thanks, Nigel. Herman, I'll come to you for the first question.
Yeah, thank you so much for doing this call, and we have a lot of questions because we're very nosy. So just appreciate you guys taking our questions. But I had a question about the losses that the club has recorded. The club reported £3.9 million loss last season. Nigel said that he wants the club to become more sustainable. It's been mentioned on this call, the player budget's gone up 18%. Club's losing about 200. That 3.9 million loss that the club reported. And secondly, I think it was mentioned that the budget that was held back for the player budget that was held back for January, that's been spent. So I'm just curious as to what exactly is the spending plan for January. Thank you.
I'll take the first bit first of all. Regarding the losses, we're probably a month or two away from publishing our 23-24 financial statements. It takes us to the end of June 2024. So there will be a reduction in the losses. You'll have seen from 3.9 million. It'll be around 300 or 400k reduction in the losses. So the first year we were in League One. So there's additional revenue from all sorts of different avenues there, but there's also additional spend the first team and all the other costs. It costs a lot more to run a first team in League One than it does to League Two. There was a time last year where we thought that the EFL redistribution deal might come into play even sooner. That keeps getting pushed back. So whatever that when it comes to this season we're in now, 24-20. We've put in place has been almost all reinvested into the first team. So that 17-18% increase in the playing budget is almost all in line with the increase in revenue, really. It's all been pumped back in. So I wouldn't expect a material change in the losses. We thought it was most important to be as competitive as we could on the pitch this season. That said, we're still in the FA Cup. We're still in some cup competitions. And there's opportunity for upside there if we have a decent cup run. Fingers crossed. Your second part of the question was what are we going to do in January? What's the plan for? That's a question for Martin and the recruitment team another time. There's a plan in place. Like we say, we've got 6 loans currently. Will we have 6 loans and the same 6 loans coming out of January? Who knows? That might be part of the plan. But Martin can answer that better. There's a plan in place to come out of January stronger than we go into it.
Steve Jenkins, come to you next, Steve.
Hi there. Yeah, right. I just wanted to say it's just 2 statements, really. First of all, further to the arrangement we now have with the football club at the Supporters Club, which came into place at the start of the season. There was a number of supporters that showed concern about the Supporters Club maintaining its independence and being able to operate as it wishes, on match days and other functions during the week. And we just wanted to give an update to say that, it's business as usual. We're very, very happy the way it's going as far as our point of view in the Supporters Club. We've had some great functions there. The Owl Night the other month was really well supported. We've got another one in December as well. They're always well supported, and we're actually reaching into the community as well. People that are not even football fans are coming down and getting involved and seeing what's going on at the club and these events. So, you know, we're delighted the way things are working out, and we're looking forward to working together with the football club moving forward to help try and raise extra revenue for the club as well. Access is always going to be there available, and we wish to discuss further any ways we can help. So that's that part of it. And now with my other hat as the O'Son Memorial Fund, first of all, big thanks to the club. Firstly, for what happened in Edinburgh during the summer. It seems a long while ago now, but that was an amazing event that we did, which we're all very proud of it. And I know the amount of Orient fans that went up there, and the way that the club supported it as well was fantastic. It was a first-class event, and people are still talking about it. And also for the remembrance match against Blackpool. Thank you for the football club for allowing that event to take place the way it did. We're all very proud of it, and we're still getting great comments. Thank you.
Right.
Thanks for your point, Steve. Can I just say, George, that just on the first point, thank you in particular for both of those, but thank you for the first one. The intention in the summer was I think it was a bit of confusion. There was never an intention to step on the supporters club toes and to encroach on our control. It was just an intention to run the sports club's beer stock, so that we could have our own events in there as a football club. We could hire out the space when it's not being used in a week, and there wouldn't be a confusion around whose stock is whose. We're getting mixed up and all that stuff. It was just one set of stock, and it would have been easy to reconcile. So I'm glad you've cleared that up anyway. So I'm glad you've seen there's no disruption to business as usual. And the ale night was brilliant. I didn't see many regular Orient fans in there as well. It was a real mixed crowd, wasn't it? There's a real difference in there. So looking forward to the next one.
And Steve, just to add my thanks, mate. I know that we, I don't think it got heated, but and I think the message coming out got a little bit convoluted. But we are, as always, grateful for the support that the supporters club bring us. I don't think there's any harm in the club looking to use the facility when it's not being used to generate more revenue. Back to Herman's point, we're trying to reduce those losses. We've got to keep finding every way we can. But hopefully we can maintain the positive, healthy relationship. I think the slight change in operation is helping, and I'm grateful to you and the rest of the committee and all the volunteers for all your efforts. So thank you for that, Steve.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Right, thanks, Steve. Are there any other questions before we wrap up?
Actually, I've got one.
Fire away, Ruth.
It was on social media, actually, so you might be answering it, George. But so, I mean, my sense, and I think everybody's sense, is that it's kind of increasingly toxic, particularly on X, and engagement is generally down for everybody. And I guess I wondered a few things about Orient and social media. One, do the first team players get advice on and support on how to manage social media, because they do get a lot of abuse on social media? Is the club considering alternatives such as Blue Sky, Threads, etc., to run alongside the much more amenable Instagram account? And finally, it's been mentioned, but the Orient directors do appear on podcasts and also on social media, and the tone is different from each of them, and the facts are quite often different from each of them. And so I just wondered if they got any training in how to do social media.
Yeah, so I can answer those ones. So point one was around training for players, wasn't it? So yeah. At academy level, yeah, the players do get, so the players, when they reach under 16, they become under 18, sorry, and they become scholars. They get media training as part of their course, which we as the club's media team are involved in. The established players don't tend to get too much. I think the group of first team players we have at the moment are generally very sensible on social media. But if there is a particular incident, then yeah, we do tend to speak to them on a one-to-one basis. But in terms of addressing them as a group, that comes when they're slightly younger. Point two, with Twitter, yeah, so we have registered for a Blue Sky account. We did that a few weeks ago. We haven't posted yet. As Mark said earlier, we are quite a small team, but we are going to be allocating some resource to that. So our Blue Sky account is there, but yeah, it hasn't really taken off yet. But it definitely will do in the next few weeks or so. And in terms of Twitter specifically, I don't think any clubs in the UK have, but we've noticed that a few clubs overseas have started to come away from it completely. So whether that happens or starts to happen with UK clubs, I'm not sure. So that remains to be seen. And then part 3, I think Mark has kind of mentioned already. I think sometimes we're maybe a little bit of a victim of our own openness and transparency, where we like to be a bit of an open house, where if you guys at the Orient have been the same. Whenever you come with requests, we try and accommodate them. And yeah, sometimes different things can be said in different meetings, and then sometimes you do get slightly different answers with stuff. But yeah, we definitely do try to keep everyone aligned. But yeah, sometimes given the volume of interviews and stuff we give, sometimes messages can be slightly mixed.
Ruth, can I just add? I mean, it's you make a really good point, and I do wonder sometimes when board members go on and they give out slightly different facts, it causes more harm than good sometimes. Although actually they're just trying to be as helpful as possible, and I kind of don't want us to be too vanilla, where it just sounds like we're a big corporate entity where people just put out the same old corporate tripe time and time again. George is really good at making sure we don't do that. But your point is well made, and it is something that I plan to take up with the board, not shrinking down their engagement, but how we do it to ensure that there is a consistency. So if we say we're losing X, then we're losing X. If we say the budget is X, then it's X, not X and Z and Y. And then of course fans start thinking that people start filling gaps in the place, and they sometimes they start making up. If you don't fill the space, it gets filled with conspiracy theories generally. So I think your point is really well made, and it's something that George and I will probably talk to the board about. But we want to remain engaging. We want to remain open and honest. Don't want to be vanilla and corporate, but we do need to be a little bit consistent in our tone, and particularly the information we give out.
Yeah, thanks. I think it is the finance mainly. It doesn't take much to scare those fans on financial matters. So
I mean, when it comes to the players, Ruth, by the way, I would love the players just never to be on X. Richie will tell you, it's one thing for a 30-year-old player to get a load of abuse when things aren't going well, but players do read it, players' families read it, and some of it, I mean, X, as you say, is highly toxic. And I even myself, I've just wondered, I can't really enjoy X anymore now. It's just full of political stuff from one shade or another, an argument or violence or whatever it is. It's not the fun that it used to be, sadly. But Richie was saying it does affect some players' confidence, and he would love fans to realise that the damage they can do to a player who's already suffering because the team aren't getting the results we want, and then they actually get hammered. I know it's just opinion, but it used to be just down the pub, but now players and their families can read it, and some players, it affects some players more than others. So fans, need to be very wary of that. And that's just the stuff that's being critical. Forget all the racist stuff that gets put out there as well.
Any other questions from anyone?
So go for it. Is there any news on considering the political implications and everything? Is there any truth in the rumour that we're playing Linfield in June or July, bearing the political connotations that come along with that?
Well, the Linfield thing is all about. Firstly, there's no plans to play. We haven't got anything lined up other than we have talked. I don't mind just sharing now. We have talked roughly about an idea of going over to New England to play a small mini tournament with a local American side and a couple of other English teams that have got mainly American ownership. Time is moving on with that, and I suspect that we haven't got enough time to put that in place. So we've got no friendlies lined up for next year. The Hearts game we hope will be a biannual game.
Yeah.
Linfield, though, do have some heritage to the First World War. I know where you're coming from with the sectarian stuff, Doug.
Yeah.
And this would be that where Linfield have been involved, it's been purely and simply to do with the people that gave their lives from Linfield in the First World War in the same way our lads did and those from Hearts did. I appreciate that some fans have called us, have mentioned that the sectarian side of Linfield, but I assure you that there are no games yet planned next season against anyone. We'll only start really thinking about that sometime during January and looking at pre-seasons.
Okay, thank you, Mark.
Thanks, Doug. Any others, or should we wrap things up? I'll take that as a wrap things up. Right, thanks everyone for joining. I'll put a stop to the stream there.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Really appreciate
you.
your time, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone. Cheers, man.
Cheers.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.